I do a best for the business feature, sort of highlighting the best people, promotions of the year. I wanted to highlight Women's Wrestling Army for 2022. Uh, so I think you're doing really great work with the promotion. It's coming up on the 1 year anniversary, so I just wanted your thoughts on your progress with Women's Wrestling Army so far, and if you maybe have your biggest success or biggest takeaway of doing this as a promoter.
So I think one, I'm completely humbled by the entire experience. Just because when we started it, we didn't know what it was going to be. We knew we had some amazing talent in Ring of Honor. We knew that going into this, we had a lot of support. But at the same time, there's those pieces that you don't think about, when you own something of, hotels and flights and, the logistics of everything. And then, how are we going to fund this thing? And when Ring of Honor closed in 2021, in December, it was just an idea of doing Women's Wrestling Army. And it's actually Willow that asked us to, do something moving forward with women's wrestling. So we started looking at it in December of 2021. And by about April, we had found funding for our first show. And that was through brandarmy.com, which is kind of like Patreon. And so we were able to put together that show, and it was literally a shoestring budget. It was just, throwing everything together. And then we had the opportunity with Pro Wrestling TV. And I think that first night and just being out there with the crowd and listening to them react, even though it wasn't a big crowd, just the way that everybody was so excited about having another all women's wrestling promotion. It's like, okay, we need to continue this no matter what. We got to figure out how we're going to continue this. And now looking at it a year later, we still have the same problems, I guess. But we also have the same the same benefits, the same positives. We still have an amazing group of talent, and I would say we have an even better talent base because we've worked with them now for a year, and they've been able to go out there and go to different promotions, go to Japan, go to AEW, Impact Wrestling, go to all these different promotions and continue to get better. Meanwhile, we're still trying to find where our home is. So, we've been on Pro Wrestling TV for the last year, but I'm not exactly sure if that's where we're going to continue.
I feel like maybe the answer to my next question is in that last answer, but most important lesson learned, would you say it's the logistics? Can you narrow it down to one thing?
So the talent is there. That's probably the number one takeaway is there is plenty of women that are talented enough to hold a show, to have an entire show about them. There's actually too many in the sense that I want to bring all of them in. And Bobby Cruz is always, kind of trying to scale me back on how many girls that we're able to bring in, because I want to highlight them all. I want to give as many opportunities as possible. Funding's the most difficult thing. How are we going to fund it? How are we going to move forward? I wish I could fund it myself because I believe in it that much. And I think that that's going to be our biggest struggle moving forward is where does this go? I know my ideal place to have it is on Honor Club. And that's because I feel like there's so much crossover between the two brands, but it's also the same style of wrestling. When we started this, we didn't want it to be too fluffy. We wanted it to be a little bit fluffy, of course, but we wanted to be able to showcase every style, and we wanted to make an impact with it. So the style of wrestling we have is a lot of what Ring of Honor is already doing. So for us, the crossover is obvious.
Have you had talks about making that happen?
We've had talks. We're in the early stages. And I think that it's all about bandwidth. Tony Khan is a very busy man. And whether or not that can happen, we don't know. But we're definitely investigating that. And Tony's super open. He's one of the best bosses I've ever had when it comes to open communication. So we're talking about it. He definitely sees the potential. And I definitely see the potential for us placing, being placed on Honor Club.
Uh, I forget how long into Women's Wrestling Army you said it, but you sort of already put it out there that okay, you're with Pro Wrestling TV, but you're already looking ahead to you want a TV contract, you want to be on pay-per-view, you want to do these things. And it's like I admire that because you can't rest on okay, we have a contract now and wait until it's too close to the end of it, because then what happens if you don't? Like you're obviously setting these goals for yourself for the promotion. So I mean, is there obviously like that's exciting if it did happen, but are you looking to renew with PWTV? Like,
So we've talked about it a little bit. We've also talked to Fight. I was actually just recently talking to Fight about some possible opportunities. I've also talked to Twitch because they've had a contract before with Impact Wrestling, so it's an obvious kind of relationship that they've already done. But I've been looking even beyond that. We don't just do the women's wrestling show. We also do a documentary series alongside it. And with the next 2 documentaries, we're going to have 6 altogether. So, that's a mini series in itself. And so we're also talking to people like Bravo. We've talked to NBC. We've talked to, Discovery. So there's a lot of different avenues that I've kind of taken. I haven't just taken the normal route of, companies that have already streamed wrestling, but also looking at a broader scale. Because to me, the story of women trying to make it in this industry is just as interesting as the wrestling itself. Where have they came from? How hard was it for them to make it to the venue itself? Just this past set of tapings, I was on the phone with Sky Blue as she's having all these flight problems of trying to make it in. And she was so excited about the match because it was against her friend, Queen Aminata. And, and you're going to see that on our next episode of Women's Wrestling Army. You're going to see the match itself. But then there's the whole story of all the adversities that she went through that day just to have that match with her friend. So, a company like Bravo, a channel like Bravo that highlights women in business, that's another avenue that we're willing to take.
Is that the one where she had to like drive like 10 hours or 12 hours? I know.
No, she
No.
didn't end up driving. No. I it's funny. She was like, "I'll drive," and I was like, "You
Okay,
will
she said she
absolutely
would.
not."
Okay,
I
she
was
didn't
like, "You
actually
will
do it.
absolutely not." But yeah, she ended up making it, and her mom came, and so like for me, that's also a big story.
Mhm. Uh, there was one. It's not from the documentary, but there was just a social media profile on Jordan Blade that you guys just shared. I think it was a couple days ago, and I thought that was a really good example of highlighting a talent story because I've seen her name all over the place. Like, okay, here's the match, and it only goes so far when it's a poster, but like you guys and the production's top notch. Like I will say that. So it's a really good quality, quick promo. Here's who I am. Here's who my story. I think she said I'm unapologetically me, and
Mhm.
she's not the only one that you featured like that. So I definitely think there's an audience for it. I'm looking forward to seeing that happen in some form. I know you threw a bunch of different names networks out there, so
We're trying. We're definitely trying. And it's nice because we have the support of the entire women's wrestling community as well. It's nice to be a part of this community of women that are all fighting for more opportunities. And I think that's our biggest superpower in all of this is we have each other's back. And I'm excited for the match between Jordan and Masha and Janai, because I feel like I've seen it in person, but to watch it back, it's a really hard hitting match, and all three of them are doing so well for themselves. Janai recently was in Japan, and each one of them are coming into their own in different ways.
You just okay, so you have Janai, who's not on television, Gia Scott, but you do have a good mix like Allison Kay, you mentioned Masha, Max the Impaler, Billy Starks, even she's been on MLW. You have this good mix of talent where they either do have TV exposure already or they could be. Can you see Women's Wrestling Army sort of being a feeder promotion to, like, is that one of your goals too?
It is. I think when you get to such a high level, the pressure to not take risks is there. So where we're at right now, and even if we get, a television deal, I want to make sure that there's not too much pressure to take a safer route. We have the opportunity right now to take chances on people to see, will they have a good match? Will they not? And if they do have a bad match, that's okay. We'll try it again. And I think watching that growth of talent is really important in a feeder system. You don't want it to be so clean to where you don't get to see the struggle. That's one of the things that makes Ring of Honor, I think, so incredibly special, is you see the undercard, which I don't always like calling them that, but you see the undercard being built. You see them, start to have those moments in matches that can make an entire career. So I like to have us positioned in that way. And that's, again, why, being under that Honor Club umbrella would be the ideal place for us, because then it's not that we're so big or on a network that tries to take too much control. But we're within a place that we can take those risks with talent.
I feel like it was funny for the longest time. People were, and I think this was before you signed there, but people kept asking like, "Oh, did you talk to Tony Khan about this? Did you talk to him?" And it's like, okay, now I can, like, I don't have to ask you that because clearly you've worked there, so that question's out of the way. But it feels like there's a lot of women's matches going on, and it's only 4 weeks in, but Ring of Honor is back on Honor Club weekly television. Do you have any hand in that at all? I guess
I don't. So I always have to tell the girls backstage, especially the ones that are coming in as extras, I am here strictly as talent. Now, do I help where I can as a mentor or as a friend? Yes, I do. Certain moves that I've seen done a million times. If somebody is learning it for the first time, do I help with that? Yes. Do I help with the organizational part of it? Like if I know that the show is running slow or fast or whatever, do I go and tell the girls like, hey, you probably want to get ready, or your match is coming up, or that kind of stuff? Yes, I do. Do I stand there as like a motherly figure to like pat them on the back after? Yes. Or if I see something that they could do better, yes, I try and help in that way. But as a title, no, I do not have that title. Would I accept it? Of course. Because I feel such like I don't know, like it's a motherly feeling of like, this was a division that we grew together. And so I always want to help out where I can in that sense. But yes, Tony has used a lot of the same girls that we've either used in the Ring of Honor women's division that Bobby and I ran, or in Women's Wrestling Army. So it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah, it's not too much of a shock because, like, the Sinclair era, I'll call it, you and Bobby were like synonymous with working behind the scenes with them. And now, again, you mentioned like so many of the same names you're seeing. I don't want to say compare and contrast, but do you have any thoughts on like the Ring of Honor that you left and the one that you came back to? Like, what was the most comforting thing besides the talent? Because obviously it's under different ownership,
Yeah.
but was
Uh,
anything sort of, okay, this feels right?
so Tony takes really good care of his people. I think that's the biggest thing I've felt so far. I know recently it's been in the news about Tony takes care of our hotels and our transport. And like that's huge, especially someone like me that came from WWE. And I remember rooming with two or three girls at like Red Roofs because we weren't making a lot at that point. We were new. And we were paying for our hotels and our cars in WWE. But now, it's nice. My husband and I always think of it as like a mini vacation every time because we don't have the kids that are coming in our room at the middle of the night. And so Tony takes care of his people in that sense. He cares. Like there was one show that we were on. It was actually at Final Battle last year, and uh Taven had flown in from Mexico and like had this horrendous travel schedule that week. And the first thing that Tony asked was, how was your travel? Thank you so much for
Hmm.
coming in. So that's comforting because I always felt that Ring of Honor was a family and it continues to feel as such. We had our set of tapings recently, and during the day there was the dark, and then at night was Ring of Honor. And it was in the same building, but something changed. And I don't know what that feeling is. But as
Hmm.
soon as it got to be right around Ring of Honor time, people settled. And also, you could see that look in everybody's eyes of like, I'm going to have the best match on Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I see the same thing, and I've seen other people say it. It's like it's the same building, but there's just something about, I don't know if it's, I mean, the set doesn't change that much. It's still pretty much the same studio, but there's just something, I can't really put my finger on it, but I
Uh-huh.
don't know. There's just something about it. We talked a lot about women's wrestling army, but I got to talk about your boys. They've been on AEW television, or I should say, you all have been on there, but the Kingdom's back. I thought that was nice, and nothing against OGK, but I like being able to say the Kingdom. It feels like, what, full circle, I guess.
Yes.
Supercard of Honors coming up. Any thoughts on what we could see from you guys? Anything? You seem like you put things into fruition. So what do you want to put out there? What do you see for the Kingdom?
It's personal. It's this one's personal. Uh we were some of the last people to be in the ring with the Briscoes. And God, I say the name and it catches. It's that like I can't believe he's gone. So for me personally, the Reach for the Sky ladder match, just because uh it's about the Briscoe brothers that night. It's about, the locker room leaders. It's about their presence still being felt. Mark is going to be there. It's going to be a huge night for Mark. Um, but as far as the Kingdom goes, just being involved with the Reach for the Sky ladder match would be a huge honor um, because of our history. And, you know, I haven't talked about it too much, but the Briscoe brothers really made the second portion of my career. They welcomed me into the Ring of Honor locker room after being a diva in WWE and being looked at like, this ditzy, this throwaway character. But the way that the Briscoes treated me, the way that Jay was able to be vulnerable in a match for me, this diva search girl, um, made me more believable. And it made my promos better. It made my work better. It made me as a manager. And I base my entire career now off of what was built during that feud, Briscoe brothers and ODB against the Kingdom and me. So it's personal. It's going to be an emotional night. I have to say, it's going to be really emotional.
Final Battle 2021, still one of the best tag team matches I've ever seen. I still see the gif of Matt doing the dive over the top ropes. That's always a favorite. But that's one of the matches that I'm looking forward to. I get to go to Los Angeles this year.
Nice.
So I hope that happens. And on a lighter note, selfishly, I also get a night away from my kids. So
Nice. How old are your kids?
I have twins that just turned 9 on Saturday, and then I have a
Okay.
3-year-old.
Okay. Yeah.
So I love them dearly, but it might be nice to go do something that I want.
Yes. Yes. Doesn't happen very often when you have kids. So that's nice.
I will say they watch wrestling with me sometimes. The little
Oh.
one actually sat down and watched it with me last night. She gets her laptop out and her mouse, and she's like, "I'm working with you." So I'm
Oh.
like, "Okay, I'll miss you." But all right. Here's my final question. You are known as the first lady of wrestling. Who's the next lady?
Gosh, the bunny, I would think. Um, Manager wise, I think. Because the first lady is really about being a manager. It's about, Miss Elizabeth and yeah, so I'd have to say the bunny. Excited to have her back when she comes back. And yeah, I'm trying to think manager wise, who else is out there? I really like Julie. I think that, with some time, uh, she's got such a presence. So there's a few out there, managers that are really starting to make their presence known. It's tough though. It's tough as a manager now because the expectations are very different than they were 10 years ago even.
I thought I was going to have to push harder for that. I like your choices. I mean,
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the managerial sense, like that's yeah.
I like both of their respective characters. And then as far as Julia, she went from being a cheerleader to
Oh yeah.
this. I mean, sinister is the word that comes to mind, but
Her
I'm
patience. That's the thing about her. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like her
oh, it's fine.
patience in the ring is what impresses me. She will wait till you're paying attention to her, which is one of the most difficult things to teach to people is just having patience in the ring. So, yeah, I'm excited to see her grow.
Anything you want to plug as far as Women's Wrestling Army? Anything else you're doing on television before I let you go?
Sure. Pro Wrestling TV, you can catch all 31 episodes that we've had so far. They are an hour long, they are quick, but they're also impactful. There's some fantastic talent, some of the talent that you're seeing on AEW. We've had Kylan King, who's over on Impact, Tasha, Willow. We have quite the roster. So you could check out all the episodes there. And then we have our big, double main event, Women's Wrestling Army, which is going to be next week. And that's going to be the Queen Aminata versus Blue Sky or Sky Blue. And then we also have our 3-way match, which is who hits the hardest. And that's Masha, Janai, and Jordan. So it's going to be a huge double main event. I'm super excited for that. And then I'm also very excited about Supercard of Honor, which is going to be next week, next Friday. And yeah, I'm excited to see what the boys are going to do because I get to be there for it. So I can't wait for next weekend.